Well, thank you so much for joining me today. Today, I've got two fantastic, distinguished guests from the world of hospital catering. We have Larry Rosenthal and we also have Phil Shelley. So welcome, both of you. Now, you're both award winners and you're both got considerable number of years behind you when it comes to hospital catering. So, Larry, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Yeah, I was a career chef. I moved to Britain in 2010, spent the first year learning British food in a pub of all places, and then said, "What do I do now?" I went to Lewisham Hospital as a chef manager for the restaurant, and I think I woke up 6 months later and they said, "How'd you like to be the catering manager?" Um, and it's been a quite a growth and education experience ever since. I think I've learned about 10% of it because every day it seems like there's more for us to learn. But it's a great field to be working in, and it absolutely makes a difference every day in people's lives. So I can't think of a better way to make a living.
Thank you, absolutely, absolutely. And Phil, tell us a little bit about yourself. You're an award
Sure.
winner as well, I believe.
We're very fortunate, aren't we? People are very kind. And I think as Larry says, we're in a world where people understand that we can all make a little bit of a difference, and sometimes we understand it's only a small difference in either patients or in staff's lives. But I think food is so emotive that both of us have roles where we can make a difference. Similar to Larry, I came in through the chefing world. I was a hotel restaurant chef and came into healthcare and worked in Somerset for nearly 30 years in the local trust as head chef and then head of facilities, and now work in NHS England as the national lead for food, and been working with brilliant people like Larry and so many other catering leads across the NHS. It's yeah, I always say to my wife, I keep reminding her, it's the best job I've ever had.
Great recommendation for new chefs joining the industry, I think there. Well, today we're going to be talking all things vegetarian and vegan. So my first question and is to both of you, do you offer a vegetarian and a vegan menu?
So at the Royal Free, we absolutely do. We are seeing rapid growth, not just from folks that are, shall we say, dedicated vegans, but folks that suddenly find themselves in the hospital, and frequently, all too often, the cause of your being in the hospital is improper eating. So it's a good chance to expose people to the option of vegan and vegetarian food, and a lot of people will try it while they're in hospital because you're not getting a check like at a restaurant, and you don't have to worry about hurting our feelings and insulting us. And we see as people try more and more vegan things, to be honest with you, we've discovered the trick is, why are we talking about vegan? This is a great lasagna. Give it a try. We do code it so people know that it's vegan or
Hmm.
vegetarian. Same thing in the restaurant
Mm.
also. So we make sure people know what we're offering. But I think the fear of vegan as being something strange and exotic is gone now. People are a little more open-minded about food. They eat in more places, and I think all of us are going to be flexitarians at some time, where you're going to want to give it a go. I, I I personally am on a weight loss journey. I've lost 40 kilos as of yesterday. I have 25 more to go, and as you know, the lower down you get, the harder it gets. And so I'm flip-flopping on diet. So some weeks I'm going vegan. I have two reasons. One is to try and shake up my diet and try something a little different. And two, I'm the guinea pig for everything that we're trying with Plant Bowl and Smart Plate, and trying to give people, a lot of people won't are afraid of vegan and vegetarianism simply because they've never had a chance to try it.
Well, let me stop you there, Larry, if I may. You sound as though you're very enthusiastic about the menus that you've got. I'm gonna ask Phil, if I may. Have you also vegan and vegetarian menus there?
Yeah, as you know, Alex, I don't work directly in a hospital, but we work with hospital sites every day.
Mm-hmm.
And we also do surveys that go out to hospitals, and there has been an enormous increase, not just in the amount of vegetarian and vegan meals, but the whole balance of them and the principle of them. That it's kind of been, as Larry says, been relabeled in a much more positive way. So kind of like any dishes, people want to know what's in it, and so therefore the description, the naming of the dish is really important. I think for patients, we've seen that nudging technique where it is kind of, think about these dishes first rather than going for the very static sort of cottage pie, fish and chips, and lasagnas, and then for our retail areas, which I know Larry's been leading some great projects on, people very interested around the balance of their food and the healthiness of the products. And therefore the plant first agenda has been really pushed forward in such a positive way, and we're very receptive.
Fantastic. Right. So moving on. Ordering a meal in a hospital can seem to be quite a complicated process. And this is to either of you. When somebody orders a meal, presumably you've got a menu and it'll say vegetarian or vegan. What's the process? How does that tick in a box or whatever it is turn into a meal being delivered to them? To either of you, what's the sort of the behind the scenes?
Okay.
Well, yeah, Larry, if Larry describes Royal Free first, and I'll pick up any of the other sites.
So first, you have a menu where you're selecting your dishes from. So we have a separate vegan menu, but the vegetarian menu is included in the normal menu. So it's every day you have a choice of vegan dishes or vegetarian dishes. The vegan dishes are on a whole separate menu. It's just easier for them to find.
Right.
So first you've selected what you want. Then it goes into a electronic ordering system, which is flagging out any allergens that you have. So if you've identified, I have a soy allergy, it will automatically block everything on the ordering app that has soy in it to prevent any accidents. Then your order comes downstairs. In my case, I'm a bought-in service. That's about probably 60% of us. So your meal is pulled, it is loaded with the other meals in a trolley that ends up going upstairs. The trolleys are both a refrigerator and an oven, so my team loads it up there. It's pre-programmed to start cooking at the appropriate time. It keeps it cold until then. Then when it comes time for service, they set up the service, and the folks servicing will verify that you are the patient that they're looking for, make sure this is Alex, and presumably you've been there for more than 10 minutes. They will know what you're eating, and that's pretty much it. So it's a coordination between I think we like to say the power of three, between nursing, dietitians, and catering. Nothing goes on a ward that hasn't been signed off on a dietitian, regardless of what it is. And nursing, particularly in our place, they're actually delivering the meals and serving the meals.
Fantastic. So this is a million miles away from ticking with a pencil and then sort of passing it around. It's all kind of computerized and quite slick, it seems.
Well, it has a lot more safety checks built
Yeah,
into
yeah,
it, because
yeah.
what you're trying to do is eliminate human error.
Hmm.
Because even if it's not a fatal allergen, which we would certainly be very concerned with, imagine if it's you, Alex, and we've accidentally served you a non-vegan meal. Just the just the
Mm,
it's a psychological blow.
of
and
course.
and it's not, we can't let that happen, because if we can mess up your meal, we can mess up an allergen too. So we take it very, very seriously. It doesn't mean we don't make mistakes, but we try
Mhm.
very hard not to. And again, it's the dietitian and the nursing and the catering working together to make sure that you're getting the right meal.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you. Anything else to add to that, Phil?
I think that there's a proactive and a reactive issue here. The proactive is ensuring that we put the person who's choosing the meal first, and
Mm,
therefore, what do they want? What can we provide? We know from the food review, one of the recommendations was for everyone to have an electronic meal ordering system in place. We know they're probably up to about 48% now across the NHS. People see it unfortunately as a financial outlay, but we also know what it gives back is plentiful. The the reactive really is that what it helps us do, one of the missing areas that we found out is that food plans for every single patient can be scant, and Larry already picked up on sort of personal mistakes being made. And it's really important that, at least with electronic devices, we know exactly what people have chosen, what people have eaten, and therefore their recovery, which is predominantly what we're trying to support, is put first. So yeah, recovery is really important. And of course, also now in retail, we're seeing apps being used so much more.
mm.
So again, the whole digital technology is coming into play in all areas of food across the NHS.
Brilliant, brilliant. Thank you, thank you. Now to give us a little bit of scale of this, because I think people can imagine like how a cafe works, but how many meals would you say that you serve each day, roughly?
So
Yeah, across the NHS is 150 million a day.
150 million a
Yeah,
day.
yeah.
Wow, wow.
So,
That is
but I
that's
mean,
some.
Larry, how many are you serving?
Well, I feel humbled, because breakfast, lunch, and dinner, it's about 2,000 patient meals a day and about 2,500 restaurant meals a day.
Yeah.
Goodness, goodness. That's
Well,
that.
we're talking 3 meals a day, and don't forget we have the beverage runs and the
Mm,
snacks that often get forgotten, and that's where people like Larry's teams come into play, where it's not just about 7:30, 12, and 5 o'clock. It's about all those little pit stops
mhm,
during the day that ensure that we capture everybody's need. We have so many people now that graze.
mm,
They want bits and pieces during the day because that's how they eat at home.
mm,
Um, so it's about those beverages, those snacks, those yogurts, fruit, cheese and biscuits, all those bits that people need.
mm.
So yeah, it's I mean in a large hospital like Larry's, it's an enormous task.
Brilliant, brilliant. And what's the budget? I'm really keen to find out this. What's the budget for the average main meal? I know you've got the snacks and all that, but
Yeah,
for the average main, if you can sort of give us a bit of context per meal, if you
you go
know,
first, Larry.
Cost per meal about 350.
Yeah,
about 350.
Yeah,
Wow.
that
Yeah.
doesn't include labor or
no,
No,
serving it, or
no.
that's buying the basic meal.
yeah.
Right. 350,
And that's
350.
about right. For us on an average point of view, we're probably looking at around 9.50, £10 a day for food cost only. So that's a couple of main meals,
Mm-hmm.
your breakfast and your bits and pieces. On average, we say 9.50 to about sort of £12,
Mm-hmm.
depending on where you are. You know, I mean, our mental health patients, our orthopedic patients, they've got big appetites. And then you've got the vulnerable and the elderly and the pediatric that have got smaller appetites. So it just sort of levels out.
And if you're designing a menu, presumably you've got nutritional guidelines to follow. But what about for vegetarians and vegans? Do you have like a sampling panel? And if you do, are there any vegetarians or vegans on that panel? How does that work? How do you decide which vegetarian dishes and which vegan dishes make it to your menus?
Okay, so at the Royal Free, first off, the standard for vegetarians and carnivores is exactly the same according to the BDA. So the BDA sets the standards for nutrition, calories, everything else. Those are not negotiable. That's the standard. So we are split between retail and patient feeding. So we have a patient feeding group where we have monthly meeting where it's run by the dietitians because we're a dietitian-led service. Their job is to tell me what the patients need. My job is to figure out how to make it work as a business and as a service. They come to the meetings. Patients can come to the meetings. The more interesting one that you would probably enjoy, 3 years ago, we started, 2.5 years ago, we started a restaurant engagement group because we decided we were going to model the NHS on healthy eating in the restaurant and stuff. And the first meeting that we had, 4 vegans showed up and said, "You've served us horribly." And we had no choice but to say, you know what, you're right. We want you to come every month and see how we've improved. We now have, I think we're the only ones that have a vegan dish every day now. We have vegetarian dishes and vegan dishes. And we also started Plant Bowl, which I think you might have seen, which is decidedly vegan. And probably nobody wants to say this, but vegan food is slightly cheaper, Alex, and it makes it.
You can say that. You can say that. You're allowed to do that.
It makes a difference. It makes a difference because, you know, we're always balancing money on everything. So it also, most people, like I said, if you don't scare them with a descriptor, those descriptors are so important. If you don't scare them with the descriptor, more and more people will try it. And once they try it, the bottom line, I think Phil and I have heard this said more than once. At the end of the day, if it's delicious, nobody cares.
Quite.
If it's not delicious, they also don't care. They don't want it. So if you can make it delicious, you know, your dedicated steak eater will be very happy to eat a vegan meal. It's just got to taste good. And to be honest with you, in the early days when we were younger, there wasn't as much thought and technique put into vegan food. You know, it's sort of the reserve of a few stray hippies and Seventh-day Adventists, and nobody looked at it the same way that we looked at other dishes.
Yeah.
Now there's no dividing line. It needs to be professionally approached the same way, and to be honest, Alex, if you give people the choices, what I try to tell people that's really startling is 10% of the British public right now is privately on a GLP, either Manjaro, Wegovy. So that's 10% of the adult population is paying in excess of 300 pounds a month because they care that much about their health and eating. So one of the sad parts of that is if you do not change your eating habits, when the Manjaro or the Wegovy stops, you will go right back to where you were. And part of that needs to be looking at I'm I like meat, Alex, but if you do not, when people ask me what to eat, and I tell them, look, I'm not the expert, but my advice is eat the rainbow, read the ingredients. If there's anything in the ingredients that you can't buy off the shelf yourself, don't eat it. Okay.
Good advice.
And then the last part is be good 90% of the time. You don't have to be perfect. We've seen study after study after study that says if you will improve, what I want to see in the restaurant, not because I'm pro-vegan, but because it's for their health. I'm trying to convince everybody through nudging and choice architecture to eat one vegan meal a week. That's my goal in the restaurant. And if we keep developing and working on it, I want you to come see what we're doing, Alex, because I'll tap anybody for help. But if you give people the choices and the information, most of the time people will make the right choice. But if you do not give them the choice, it does no good to lecture me and tell me that, Larry, you need more plants in your diet. And then I go and all I see is, steamed or boiled mush. And I don't see, like I'm excited when I get, a roast poblano pepper or even a really nice carrot that's been properly roasted. You guys are both chefs. You know the glory of getting it right. So you can't give people insipid garbage and think you're going to influence their eating. It's got to be wonderful. It's got to be delicious. So this is our push now. We think we've got the method and the pattern worked out. All I need to do is make sure that I've got absolutely delicious stuff to put in front of people, and they will make the healthy choices that we want them to.
Brilliant. I'm going to move on to another question. I've got a few to get through, if that's okay. If somebody was a vegetarian or a vegan, they may be concerned, perhaps if they're not visiting Royal Free London, but they may be concerned about if they're going to get a vegetarian meal or not. If it's obviously if it's a planned stay, what can they do? What can the patient do ahead of time to kind of to work out what food is available? Is there an easy way to do that, Phil? If you
I mean, I think you can sense with Larry, they're very, very proactive at Royal Free, and that is not the case everywhere. So our role nationally is to try and get a bit more consistency, one about the approach, but also about putting menus online. It's no different when you visit a site as a patient. One of the first things they want to know is, where am I going to park? Which entrance do I go in? If I'm in for a few days, what's the food like? We look at menus online before we go to a restaurant. It'd be great to have NHS menus online so people can actually see. We've spoken before about the challenges that we have, not from the food team, because the food team are trying desperately hard to provide the best choices possible. There's no point if all the choices on the menu are there and it's not being offered, then that's a problem. And that's the bit we have to get over. So let's make the menus more visible. Let's have them online so people can see in advance, and let's ensure that our ward teams have got the tools that they need to provide the best choice possible for every single patient, no matter what their diet. And we know, don't we, Alex, through social media, that there are some negative messages sometimes about, I was in hospital for 4 days. I ended up with 4 jacket potatoes because that's all I was offered. That is not a true picture of what goes on in the NHS now. And we need to make sure that departments, stay in touch with that.
So if someone was vegetarian or vegan and there was a planned stay, can they order their meal before they arrive, or how can that happen? Or you can see on the menu?
Not generally.
No,
because first of all, we need to know where you are, what ward, what bed, because there needs to be an element of control. But what they can do is get a picture of their menus and think, well, if I'm there, what would I choose? And that's something we're promoting, that sort of that advance notice that we'd all like to have. So when they see a menu, they've already got a picture in their mind of what they're looking for. And I don't think that's too difficult to ask.
No, not at all, not at all. Next question, if that's okay. If somebody had issues with capacity, and they've been vegetarian or vegan all their lives, how would you be able to identify that that person got a vegetarian or a vegan meal to match, you know, their choices?
Larry,
So I can tell you what happens here. So if you're lacking capacity, there is going to be somebody with you initially, definitely. So because it's the same thing for medical decisions, things have to be decided if you lack the capacity. So generally in that case, there's usually a family member that will accompany them, try to get them settled in. And much as we all hate complaints, Alex, if somebody is in a UK hospital and they're told they can't get a vegetarian or vegan meal, they need to complain. You know, if they have nothing, we all have diet chefs. So my diet chef is, for example, if you come in and you're, you know, you have to have no salt or a clean diet or things that are not in the ordinary because of your medical condition, I have a diet chef who can produce that. So everybody has to have one. But the biggest thing is to say something. You're not offending anybody when you're asking to be fed properly.
In the case of somebody who didn't have a family member, but were vegetarian and had capacity issues, is there any sort of system that you could check on another record? Or I'm sort of thinking if an elderly person maybe had a fall and were dazed and confused and they were vegetarian, and you couldn't get hold of their family, you know, is there another system in there?
Somebody would have to tell us, because, you know, we don't know, because we get I'm not trying to sound flip about this, Alex, but we get a lot of folks who are incapacitated and they may sometimes be completely out of it. So somebody's got to tell us. We can't presume. But once we know, and usually it's in your records, but whoever is checking you in, because if you're lacking capacity, if it's not a family member, there'll be a social worker, somebody working with you. But for people whose things like that are important, you know, there's make sure that it's in your records. Make sure that everybody knows your wishes, because I've also, you know, God forbid, saw somebody my age. He had a stroke, and fortunately his recovery was amazing. But for about a month, he was not capable. He was completely out of it. It's miraculous that he turned out as well as he did. So it can happen to any of us, but if it's in your records, you've made it well known, you know, and then if you're worried about that now, tell them, you know, put it in your records, talk to the people that you're arranging your care with, make sure that they all know. And I did see a patient who wore a bracelet that said vegan. You know, it looked just like a medical bracelet, except it said vegan in red letters.
We at Vegetarian for Life, we actually have those.
Do you?
So we do. Very useful. I've seen other people that have got tattoos as well. But it's a serious issue, of course.
Yeah.
You know, when somebody, you know, it may be a choice that they've made for many years, and then they're in a position where they can't communicate it, and then there's an assumption that they may eat meat, and of course they may not know that they're eating meat, and so it's a difficult thing. So certainly something worth working out to see whether there's a better way to do that. Now, what's your favourite, on a lighter note, what's your favourite vegetarian or vegan vegan particularly. Let's go for vegan on your menus. What's your favorite? We'll start with Phil, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I got to say, lentil and chickpea are probably the two items that I eat the most when it comes to thinking about dishes, and often I'll make that into a really light curry, which will be a vegan curry, but also possibly a stir fry. I mean, both Larry and I have been traumatized by one of our leaders, Mr. Ratcliffe, Tim Ratcliffe, who speaks to us so much around seasonal, and it's kind of understanding that we should be using our fruit and vegetables that are available right now, and not just thinking about, well, that's what I always have. So yeah, for me, I mean, at home we very much like our light dinners and teas, and that's what we eat. Um, Alex, just picking up on what you said earlier on, we have to deal with people, vegetarian, vegan, but we have to also deal with your textured diets. There's a lot of what I would call high risk, and I put vegetarian and veganism in that same category because it's a risk, because we should not be giving food to people that don't want it or cannot eat it. So, what Larry and I work towards is ensuring that every patient is protected when they come into our care. We protect them as best as we can by providing them exactly what we need. And I don't think any type of diet, whether it's medical or chosen, should be diminished in any way. It should be providing the right choice for every single person on an individual context. So, I've always been very certain about that. But for me, there's so much food. I mean, I'm a massive foodie, and fresh food and vegetarian, vegan food high on my agenda. What about you, Larry?
Oh, my favorite has got to be the sweet potato and spinach curry. I,
Mm,
I I don't think sweet potatoes are used near enough
no.
in Britain, and I'm wrestling with my restaurant crew about that one. We've by the way, in the restaurant, we've also done 50-50 dishes, which have gone
Yeah.
over really, really well. People are beginning to realize that the meat actually, for most dishes, is not what's forming your critical test. I mean, you guys are chefs, it's the mirepoix you start off with is half the
Mhm.
battle there. So I'd much rather take meat out of a dish than take the onions out. And Alex, he was talking about diets. We also have a Jane diet. So those folks can't have onion or garlic, and I cry just looking at it as a chef because well, how am I going to make something savory without an onion in it?
Yes. Well, yeah, there are. It can be done. It can be done. It can be done. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. Just to finish off, if you've any more final thoughts, Phil, and then we'll go to Larry.
Yeah, well, I know Larry's very keen for you to visit where you are, but what I would say, Alex, we do hospital visits around the country. And maybe when I'm up in the northwest and doing a hospital visit, you'll be more than welcome to join me, just to see what they do, talk to the chefs, talk to the catering leads, talk to dietitians, and just, so you get a view for what we hear. It is variable. That's what we have to deal with. We've got 207 trusts around the country, so there are 207 different ways of doing things, and that's life. Okay, but we are all aiming for that same goal, and that is putting people and their diet first and supporting their needs.
Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful, wonderful words. Thank you. And Larry.
I would say for the folks that you're advocating for, tell people so that it's in your medical record, and don't be afraid to complain and advocate. You have a right to be fed properly according to your diet. That's our job. That's what we do. And most of us are pretty good at it. So speak up, say something. I don't think you should be seeing, years ago, you used to see resistance. People would look at you cross-eyed if you said you were, they got to the point where they were okay with a vegetarian, but when you said vegan, you'd see them freeze up, lock up, and panic. Okay. We all know what that is now. We're all professionals. We've all dealt with it. We all don't be afraid to ask. You've got to eat the way that you eat. The worst thing for your health is to radically change your diet while you're in the hospital.
Yeah.
So that's why we want to make sure that you're, unless there's a medical reason for it, you need to stick. If you were a vegetarian, you need to stay vegetarian until your hospital stays over.
Fantastic. That's it's a great way to end. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. That's made it's opened up other questions, but it's certainly answered many questions. So thank you today, Larry, and thank you, Phil. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Have a great day. Cheers.
Take care.